Welcome to Afrida News. We are in the studios today to talk about a very important issue to many Ghanaian youth. Today's topic is going to be on the e-levy, a policy that was introduced last year in 2022 by the government. It has seen some pushback, but today we're interested in learning what the students have to say about this. So I'm going to have my guests introduce themselves and then we'll get right on to it.
So I am Ireland Elliot Sasashti.
And I am Asantewa Abigail.
And I'm your host for this session, Dr. Corey Nimright. Welcome once again. So I'll start with you, Ireland. The e-levy is out.
Okay.
We've gone through it for about a year now. What are your thoughts about it?
Okay, so personally, I don't think it's a good thing that is helping Ghanaians now because at first we were taking road tolls, which we didn't even see what they were using the revenues from the road tolls to do, and they just cut down off taking of the road tolls and introduced the e-levy. Then from there, just last week or last 2 weeks, news came up about how the total transactions in last year shoot up due to the e-levy transactions and everything, and the figure or the amount that came out was more than 3 billion, and which we didn't even see what. Yes, 3 billion Ghana cedis, which we didn't even see what the government and its people use that money for. So for now, I would say it's not something that is really helping, because if they are using the e-levy and they are making us see the importance and the things they are using the revenue for, I would say something that is helping. But for now, it's not helping us at all.
Okay, so Abigail, what about you? What do you think about the e-levy that has been rolled out, and what impact do you think it's having on the country?
Well, I have been against this e-levy from start because, first of all, we are the citizens and we have to, we have a mouth in everything that happens in the country. I don't think the government can just go ahead and implement anything without consulting us. And they did actually, but most of us disagreed, but it was yet implemented. And most of the citizens now.
I hear you. So let's talk a little bit more then about the fact that Ghana is going to the IMF.
Yeah.
And we need money to be able to go through this very difficult situation in which we're in.
Yeah.
Can't we see the e-levy as one of the policy-driven initiatives that will actually help us come out of this situation and be on a better economic footing? Ireland, what would you think?
Okay, yeah, so the e-levy is actually a good thing that can save us from going to the IMF. Why? Because looking at the money the government or the GRA made, is it the GRA, right? The GRA or the Ghana Revenue Authority, they made from the e-levy last year. They collected from the e-levy last year. It should be something that can, help us for a while, or that can sustain the country, solve its deficit and other issues. So I don't think the e-levy is a bad thing when you are looking at it from bailing us from the IMF side. No, it can actually go a long way to help us from going to the IMF.
Okay. So Abigail, you mentioned earlier that, it was important that the government listens to us. But in these times where we find ourselves in a very difficult situation with the IMF and everything else, as the government that is trying to take us out of that, do you think that allows them to have some latitude in making decisions, the tough decisions for us, whether we like it or not? Because when they look at it, that is how we are going to find ourselves out of the situation we're in.
Okay, I think you can't force some things on the citizens. That is the reason most people now go to mobile money vendors and then negotiate with them. And maybe they are sending money to someone, and in order to avoid paying the e-levy, they tell them, oh, I'm depositing to my own number. And if you are depositing, you don't pay for any charges. And so I think that most of them are avoiding the e-levy by doing this. And I don't see how the government is going to achieve what they want to achieve if this keeps going on. And so it's important that they listen to us Because if whether they listen to us or not, the citizens are going to do what they want.
So what options, if you're looking at the climate right now, what options do you think the government should have introduced? Do you have any thoughts or ideas about that?
Okay, so before the e-levy was implemented, it came out for Ghanaians to air their views about it. But I don't think the government really took our views into consideration, because there was a lot of back and forth about the e-levy implementation, which most Ghanaians were not happy about it. So I think the government is there to serve the citizens. So if something is wrong and the citizens are airing their views, they have to take our views into consideration before implementing any other policies. Because at the end of the day, it's going to affect us very much, and not they in power. Yeah.
This is AfridaNews. You are watching a segment with our youth. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This is AfridaNews. Welcome to our youth segment, where we are talking today about the e-levy in Ghana and all the issues and challenges associated with it. In the studio with me, I have a young lady called Abigail, and I have a wonderful young man called Ashite. I think he prefers to be called Ireland. But just before we went on break, we were talking about options. What options do you think the government would have in a climate like this? So Abigail, what else could they have done? If not the e-levy, what else do you think the government could have introduced?
I think that it was totally wrong for them to have abolished the road tolls, because even though we were not seeing the benefits of it in a long time, it would have gone a long way to help if it was added to the funds from the e-levy. And I think that they were over-expecting the e-levy. They were expecting that it was going to, because a lot of people use mobile money, and then they were expecting that, okay, they were going to generate a lot of tax from it. But this is a situation where Ghanaians have decided to outsmart the government by depositing instead of sending money. And when you deposit, you don't pay e-levy.
All right, so taxes are important because for many countries, that is where you get the monies to help build the country. What do you know about what the government uses for our tax dollars, tax cities, that we pay? Ireland, let me ask you, are you aware of where your monies are going when you pay taxes?
Okay, so I know about a couple of things which the government uses our taxes for. First, the construction of our roads, construction of public schools and hospitals, then the school feeding program, which is the free SHS. So these are some of the things I know the government uses our taxes to, fix.
And what do you think about the free SHS program?
Okay, so the free SHS program, it's a good thing. It's a good thing because it's actually helping a lot of people, a lot of parents out there who some can pay actually, but they just want their wards to have a feel of how public senior school is, because most of parents have taken their wards to the private schools, which they don't support the idea of the free SHS. But to me, I think it's a good thing, because if the government has introduced something like this, it's not everyone that can pay the school fees and buying of books and giving the ward upkeep money at the same time. So maybe their one is just to give the ward the upkeep money. Then if the government has decided to take the feeding program and catering of the food and school uniform and other things, it's going to help, because a lot of people are out there and looking at the free SHS started from 2020. That was when the first batch went to school, and looking at from that time till now, the number of students have increased, which they've increased massively. And if you are going to calculate it, it's more than 50% for the first batch that went to school. So that should even tell Ghanaians that there are a lot of parents who are out there and they can't give or provide for their wards. So just after junior high schools, they just find them to do any or join any job just to feed for themselves and the home as well. But because of this free education the government introduced, the number has increased, which is helping a lot of people out there. So it's
Okay.
actually not a bad thing at all. It's a good thing.
Okay, Abigail, what about you? What do you know about what the government is using tax cities for? And out of what they are using it for, which of the program do you think best or most deserves the investment?
Personally, I'm not seeing anything. I think we are just paying the tax, and I'm not seeing any improvements. And to come to the free SHS, I think that even though it's a good thing, it wasn't well thought of. Because Ghana is not developed enough to be able to cater for all these students. There are so many students, there are so many schools with thousands of students, and are we do we have the funds to cater for all these schools? It makes, I think that there are so many things that we can do. All these things are just bringing debt to us. That is why we end up going to IMF for loans and all of that, because we do things, we overdo things. So that's what I think.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier, Ireland, that some people could pay for their fees.
Yeah.
Do you think that there could be some adjustments made to the policy so that it would, because if like to Abigail's point, some schools are not in great shape, some of these monies that are being used to pay parents who can afford could actually go back into investing in the schools that the students are in some of the villages and rural areas. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, personally, I think the e-levy policy should be readjusted because
Free SHS or
the free SHS policy, because there are a lot of parents out there who can actually pay. Because earlier last year or middle somewhere last year, where the schools were crying about their food shortages, it came on news that some parents went to the schools to offer their wards foods, but the securities denying them from giving the food to their wards, which shows that they can take care of them, they can provide for them if the government can do that. So maybe the government should just bring a policy where the parents can take up maybe the payment of the books and maybe the uniforms. Then the government will take up for the food and the fees.
You're listening again to Afrida News. We are here talking to our youth about the e-levy and other issues associated with that. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Afrida News. In the studio, I have with me Abigail and Ireland, and we're having a discussion today about e-levy, and we've been able to talk about all sorts of things, and now we are zeroing in on some of the policies that the government has brought in that are tax-driven, and one of them is the free SHS program. And although that's a program that's lauded by many, there are certain aspects that we believe may be able to be tweaked from the conversation we've just had. So Ireland mentioned earlier that some parents may be able to pay for their wards, and you had also talked about the fact that there are some schools that are in very poor conditions. So knowing these two conditions, do you think that there could be room for the government to make some adjustments so that the policy could be better accepted by everyone and be able to probably serve everyone in a more fair manner?
Well, if I say that the whole policy should be abolished, it means that the really, really poor parents who can't afford for their boards will now be disappointed, and their wards will be back home because most of them are now in school due to this free SHS. So I don't know if there is a way to fish out the parents who can afford for their wards so that those parents pay for their wards and then the rest are catered for by the government.
You know, when we look at the policy, a lot of people also were concerned that there are many people who can pay taxes that are not, like areas like Kanishi Market, where many of these people in the informal sectors are making a whole lot of money, but we are not able to collect. So we find ourselves in a situation that only a few people are paying taxes to run the entire country, you know. And these questions are just being asked so we know what the youth is thinking about these things. So Ireland, when you look at a situation like that, what thoughts do you have in terms of a few, and which probably is the same in every country, but I think in Ghana there are a lot more people in the informal sector, so the government is not able to collect as many taxes as they could. What do you think can be done to make us realize as Ghanaians that it's important for us to pay taxes?
Okay, so before I would tackle the question, I would say not long ago, before they abolished the road tolls, I was coming from Tema heading towards Accra, so we're using the Tema road toll area, and we got there, and a guy got to the toll point where he had to pay, but he didn't pay, and he just drove off, and we got there, and one guy was asking the man in the toll, why didn't he take money from the guy I just left? I was like, oh, me nipa me name no. You get it, and that is one thing.
What does that mean?
Like my friend, I know him, and the guy just went. I was like, that is why the country is not developing, because they've placed you there to take money from everyone that passes by, except public officials who are using the public buses. But if that guy is your friend and you are not working on your own, it's the government that has placed you there and are supposed to take money and are just giving it out like that. How do you expect the government to get the money to fix the problems of the country? So I think those people who are not paying the taxes, when they are found guilty or when they are caught, they should be punished in a way to serve as a deterrent to other people that, okay, so when I don't pay or when I refuse to pay my tax, this is what's going to happen to me. Because there's this country that they arrested one of their footballers. One famous footballer was arrested because he refused to pay the tax for quite some number of months. And it's not that the guy doesn't have the money, he has the money, but sometimes they feel what they are paying the money for is not used for the right thing. But it is a policy that has been set up by the government. You have to pay. If you are paying and it's not being used by what you want it to be used for, you are a citizen. You can air your view, it will get to the government, then they can work on things.
Okay, so Abigail, what about you? Let me just make sure. I just want you to maybe talk first about how can we encourage everyone to participate in contributing to taxes that will help build Ghana.
I think no matter what, you won't get everybody doing the right thing. Like the toll issue he brought up, that comes down to the point of practicing nepotism. Okay, I know this person and I want. Even the people in power are practicing it. There are lots of people who qualify for job opportunities in the government sector, but the people in power bring the people they know to serve this, take up these posts. And so if you say that the citizens do this and then it's not helping the economy, what about the leaders? They are doing it as well. So you can't entirely blame the citizens. And I think that the people paying the taxes are more than the ones not paying. And so you can't use that as an excuse to say that is why the country is not developing.
But do you have any statistics? Because when you say that people paying taxes are more than the people not paying, why do you believe that?
I think that because most of us buy from shops, from supermarkets, and we pay VAT whether we like it or not. It's added to our bill, and it only comes down to the point where I heard a story of some shops taking these taxes to themselves instead of giving it to the government. And so with that, it would not be our fault because we think that okay, we've paid, but then this is the situation where the shop owners are taking their monies to themselves. I don't know how they are able to corrupt the machine to print out fake taxes for us to see. So I think that's
okay. So you're talking about the taxes that are on goods versus the taxes that you file for and pay. Okay. So for those, no one has a choice. When you're buying something, you have to pay those taxes. So I understand what you're saying, but it goes back, what you said goes back to what Abigail was saying, because Abigail was talking about the fact that there's nepotism. If somebody is doing it, why can't I? You mentioned that for the road tolls, for example, it was exempt to public officials in public buses.
Yeah.
And sometimes this is probably the problem that most Ghanaians think. People who can normally afford to pay for something are the ones that are being exempted from it.
Okay.
So why do you think the policy was that public officials who are using public buses should not pay. And I don't know that to be true. I'm
Okay.
just taking your word for it.
Okay. The thing is, the public officials they pay because I have friends and other relatives who are working in the public sector. So at the end of the month, when their pay slip come, and you are very close to them, they can show it to you. They'll be like, you can have a look. They deduct VAT.
No,
They
I'm talking
deduct
about the
this
road
tax.
toll. You said public officials, it was exempt from public officials using public buses.
Yes.
So, but that, I'm not talking about taxes on their pay slip. I'm
Mhm.
talking about when we had the road tolls, going through the road tolls,
Like mostly when the convoys are passing, do they pay road tax?
you know. What I was trying to make the point is what, sometimes when the gentleman who said, he's my friend, let me pass,
Yeah.
probably sees other people who are government officials passing without paying. And so when he sees that, he has no qualm saying, that's my friend to pass. See?
The only people that are allowed to use the toll without paying are the government officials who are using the public buses because
That's exactly, that's what I was saying, why? Do you know why?
because for them, I think because their taxes are already being taken out from their monthly salary, that is why they are not being allowed to pay at the toll booth. That is my
Okay.
perception.
All right, so I'll leave that alone because one, I don't know that to be true, and two,
Okay.
that reason is interesting.
Yeah.
But
I'd
so,
like to say
Sure.
something. Coming down to what I think the government can do to improve, ministers and then the people in government can afford for so many things, but the government is paying for them. And for instance, you go to the fuel station. I, as a citizen, will pay for my fuel, but the government officials don't pay when they can pay. So I think that all these things should be taken into consideration. There are some things that, I know that holding certain positions come with certain advantages, but is it helping the whole country? We should consider all those things.
I think sometimes too, it's not that, it's holding certain positions comes with disadvantages. Meaning that every position, everything you do is criticized, you are vilified, there's a lot more involved, and that is why there's some level of compensation sometimes for these people. Not necessarily that it comes with advantages, but there are also disadvantages that it comes with, and sometimes it's very difficult on them. So we don't see that part. We normally tend to see the part where, they're enjoying and all that stuff. But when you go on media and people are vilifying them, you realize that it's really a tough job. So some of these things are perks, just to, help out. Right or wrong, I'm not debating that, but I'm also saying that there are disadvantages also to those positions that we only look at, we rarely look at actually. Go ahead, Arila.
But with the fuel thing my colleague was talking about, I'm sure when they are using their private cars, they do pay for the fuel. Or
Well, the fuel coupons are given
They
to
have,
you,
yes.
so technically you're supposed to use it for your official, use.
Okay.
Yes. So when you have the official car, and I think there's even further when you take it to the gas station, they're supposed to write the license plate on it as they take the fuel from you for accountability. So there are checks and balances in place. Whether or not they work is another matter.
okay.
But so here you are, the youth of today. You have all these thoughts about all these things that are happening that you don't agree with. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what is the Ghana that you want to see? I will let you
Okay.
start.
Okay, so with me, there are a lot of policies right now which has been implemented, which I don't think they are good and are helping the citizens of the country. So, an instance, the e-levy policy is a policy that is really killing a lot of Ghanaians because if you should send a day, you are sending 2,000 plus to a friend. Just look at it. Charges alone you are supposed to pay before you are able to send that money to that friend, and at the end of it, you are not seeing what that money is being used for. The COVID fund, the money that went into it, the policies attached to it, what was the other money that was left used for? We didn't see what it was used for, and there were policies attached to all these things, which the people in authority, most of them have harbored this money and are using it for personal gains. So 5 or 10 years from now, we should be looking at a Ghana where we should get a leader who will take into considerations all these things, and they should scrutinize or cut down certain things to help the Ghanaians and use that money to fix the problem of the country.
Abigail, what about you? 5, 10 years from now, when you look down the line in Ghana, what kind of Ghana do you want to see and do you want to live in?
Well, I think that's just saying it. We've been saying these things from the past, and Ghana is still Ghana. So I don't like to say things that because.
Well, the truth of the matter is that in 5, 10 years from now, you'll be 10 years older.
Yes.
What do you see yourself contributing to the Ghana that you want?
Okay, so 5, 10 years, I would be older. What am I also benefiting from the country?
No.
I'm in school now,
Yes.
and I know that from the past we all think that okay, if you are in the tertiary after completing, you should become a well-endowed person. You should have a good job and all of that. But this is a situation where the financial minister came to say that there are no jobs in the government sector, and so if you are in school, you should venture into entrepreneurship. And I don't think right now I keep asking myself, is the government helping us? Are we wasting our time in school? So I think that all these things, honestly, I don't want to have any plans for the future because I don't want to be disappointed.
So you do, but do you see yourself as an important component of transformation for Ghana's future? Because if you don't get involved, wait a second. If you don't get involved, then you get what you get. But if you are looking for Ghana to be better, don't you see yourself as an important component in the transformation?
I'm not looking into being a government official or a government person. The best I can do to help the country is to do the right thing as a citizen, pay the tax I'm supposed to pay and all of that. But is the government going to do the right thing by using those taxes and paying for the right things?
So you won't go and say you're depositing money in your account when you go in?
No.
I want to stay with you for a second too, because I want to say, so are government officials the ones responsible for transforming the country? In your mind?
We as citizens, the leaders, we are all involved in the development of the country. But right now, who is not doing the right thing? Because I think that the citizens are paying the taxes as they should. But why are we not seeing the improvements? What is the tax being used for? Like we were paying road tolls from God knows when, and we were not seeing improvements. Even though some roads were being constructed, others were just left there. And even the ones that were constructed, I don't think the right materials were used, because 2-3 years later, you see that there are potholes in the roads that have been constructed. So I think that the government needs to work on all these things.
All right, so Aridan, do you see yourself? I'll ask you the same question I asked Abigail. 5-10 years from now, you gave me your answer, but what do you see, or how do you see yourself within the transformation of Ghana, the Ghana that you want to see? What role do you see yourself playing?
Okay, so I would like to fix myself within a good citizen and a loyal citizen who is going to be loyal to the policies of the government, because everything starts from X. If we are not able to listen or do whatever the government is asking us to do, even though those in authority are somehow not doing the right thing, if you are able to do the right thing, maybe at some point, if there should be a good leader, things are going to change. So I'm just hoping and looking forward to being a loyal and a good citizen who is going to abide by all the rules and policies of the country.
Okay. So my final question is, you talk about being a good leader. So if the president of Ghana comes and says, all right, students at UPSA, I've picked you, Abigail, and I've picked you, Ireland, to be presidents for a day. And whatever decision you make, I will not rescind it when I come into power the next day, when I resume office or my position the next day. So Ireland, he puts you in charge for a day. What is the one thing that you would look to change to bring about transformative change here in Ghana?
Okay, so one thing I would like to do is all the ministers, we have to cut down the number of ministers. because you are not seeing the importance of some ministers and what they are doing. It's all the ministers, you have to look and reduce at least their salary to fix other problems of the country. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you, Abigail. So president for a day, President Abigail Asantewa,
I think
what
that's-
will you do? The most important thing that you think you would do?
Listen to the people.
Okay.
I'm not going to force or implement things that they disagree with. And I think that we can go a long way to helping the development of the country.
Well, there you have it. There's a lot that came out this during this discussion, but one song came to mind, and I'm just going to say the words: "Arise, Ghana youth, for your country. Your nation demands your devotion." Something, and then it goes: "We are all involved. We are all involved
Yeah,
in
we're
building our
involved.
motherland." So let's all put our hands to the wheel. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Ireland, for this wonderful conversation on e-levy, which veered into all sorts of things. And thank you also for listening. This is Afrida News. See you next time. Stay safe.